Do you guys remember Goat Simulator? That game that all the big YouTubers were playing like 7 years ago?
Bab!
Well, 2014 called cause they want their game idea back.
Oh my god, that is so cold!
Just Die Already is a self-described old people mayhem sandbox game made by some of the same developers behind Goat Simulator, which shamelessly capitalizes on the explosion of boomer memes which were blowing up when it released last year. The extremely basic premise of the game is that you're an old person who's been kicked out of your retirement home because they had a Joker moment, and now freed from the inhibitions of society, you're free to do whatever your little gamer heart desires. Rob a store, cause vehicular manslaughter, feed the sharks, do a little terrorism, grind someone up into a delicious meat sausage. Really just get creative. Now, Just Die Already is a decently fun game, which is why I struggled with whether to recommend it or not when writing this review. Ultimately, I do recommend it, but with a few caveats. Before I explain that more though, let's get into the basics first. Lacking a story of any kind, the only direction you are really given by the game is completing your bucket list, a set of tasks that you get for each zone on the map. These can be something pretty straightforward, like knocking over trash cans or climbing certain buildings, or they can be more open-ended, like hinting at there being a puzzle to solve in a certain area. Completing the better objectives lets you pull special items which are normally found in the game world from vending machines, which is very useful as, for some reason, items that you find in the game world don't ever respawn within the same session. So if you need to refresh a unique item that you don't have in the vending machines already, you'll need to back out to the menu and reload back into your save. Another problem is that most of these reward you with tickets, and I'm honestly not sure what they do. At first, I thought they just let you pull things from vending machines or unlock items easier, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Grabbing something from a vending machine doesn't decrease the amount you have. I suppose they might be collectibles, like to show how much of the game you've done, but as an incentive to complete challenges, that's pretty lame. The game's map is somewhat small, but is chock full of detail, and you can interact with almost any item or NPC. Surprisingly, there are a lot of detailed interior areas, as well as a good focus on verticality, which I really like. Unfortunately, you barely get rewarded for exploring every nook and cranny, which is a real shame. Being naturally curious and liking the work put into the environment, I really enjoyed exploring, but the game didn't really incentivize it for people not naturally inclined to do that. You might get a few tickets, but as I've said, those are kind of pointless. If you aren't the type to just enjoy looking around, not needing to explore will drastically reduce this game's already short shelf life for you. Additionally, if you hate jumping puzzles, this is not the game for you. As I mentioned, there's a huge focus on verticality in the map design, and with that comes jumping puzzles galore. And I feel like the character movement is not as crisp as I would prefer to have for navigating them, often feeling too sluggish to pull off delicate moves. One tip I will give is to look out for this rotor thing that you can use to fly around. I won't spoil where it is hidden because it's a cool find, but trust me, this thing is fun to use and lets you easily reach places that are a pain to reach or are otherwise inaccessible. The open world has a very similar feel to the Postal series, and in that, I don't mean it looks like it was designed by an edgy kid in a trench coat. Rather, it is similar in how once you start causing a little trouble yourself, all the NPCs will start freaking out and things will go completely haywire. The humor of the game mainly comes from these situations and from the physics-based ragdolls and ridiculous violence that is created from them. I mean, you can't deny the humor in seeing an elderly man strapped to a rocket flying into an electric fence, only then to careen off and explode against the side of a building. But on the flip side, the novelty of this type of humor starts to wear off after a while. Stepping onto a manhole cover and being thrown up into some power lines by sewer fumes is only funny the first few times. And the game is very much a one-trick pony in using that ragdoll equals funny aesthetic. In terms of graphics, while the textures might not be the most detailed, I think that the graphic style makes up for it. The colors are rich and lively, and the character designs, the detail put into the buildings, and the ambient NPC animations create a very interesting world to explore. I will say though that this water, right here, this looks like shit. Mario 64 has better water than this. The most unique mechanic of this game is that your boomer can basically ignore the laws of nature themselves, being able to survive not only losing multiple limbs or breaking their back, but even being reduced to a set of hips. Yes, you can roll around as a pair of hips. This isn't just cosmetic. You can only access some areas when you have certain body parts broken, which is just such a wacky and unique idea. It actually rewards you for taking damage and even self-inflicting damage on yourself strategically. And damaging yourself or getting damaged in this way isn't really discouraged, as death itself does not really have any consequence in this game. Irrespective of lost body parts, you can actually die if you lose all your health. I think it's tied to how much blood you lose, but this doesn't really matter as you can instantly respawn at a nearby trash can at any point. It's a very casual system designed to get you right back into the action as soon as possible. Yet despite the positives, there's a decent lack of polish in other areas. Enemies and NPCs that you kill respawn after just like 10 seconds right in front of you, so if killing people and causing chaos is the point of the game, the fact that the game doesn't even have the courtesy to wait until you move or even just look away to respawn people that you've killed takes away from your actions having any semblance of consequence. I want to see the ground littered with corpses, goddammit. At worst, this actually made solving a puzzle that required combat unnecessarily annoying, as the enemies that I killed in order to clear the puzzle area would constantly be respawning on top of me as I was trying to move this damn ball. Animations and hitboxes can also seem to be kind of wonky. There were just many times I tried to grab something only for my character to just slap at it ineffectually, even when my hands weren't broken. Melee combat is literally hit or miss, as sometimes your attacks will phase right through enemies, while other times a poke with a sword will send them flying. It honestly feels like you have very little control over your swings. In contrast to your character's seemingly physics-based melee mechanics, all enemies pretty much have this near instantaneous bitch slap move where they'll instantly send you flying and there's practically no way to dodge it. In addition to just looking bad, I feel like a lot of potential for funny situations was lost here by not having the enemies also use a physics-based combat system. Just imagine your enemies being just as incompetent as you and the funny ways that would affect melee combat. When the novelty of stabbing people wore off, I just found myself shooting at people with a pistol, as it was much easier than dealing with the inconsistency of melee.
Boring.
Lastly, and this is a really weird one, the game has basically no ambient music, besides like what is playing on random radios across the map. Here, just take a listen.
What the fuck was that?
It's just so weirdly silent. What is that? I suppose I should also briefly touch on the fact that there's co-op and multiplayer modes, but I wasn't really able to access anything more than just joining a random person's lobby and fucking around for a bit. There seem to be very few people playing in open lobbies, so you'll just be best off getting some friends together if you want to play co-op, and I can see that actually being a lot of fun if you can. The last thing here, and probably the biggest deal breaker, is the lack of content. The game is really fun for an afternoon or evening of gaming, but after playing for about 5 hours, I feel like I've seen all it has to offer, and it started becoming more tiresome. There are collectibles to find, but that stuff doesn't really interest me long term unless the gameplay itself is pretty replayable, and I don't think what's here is. So if you're looking for a game with a little more structure than your typical GTA Rampage, this might not be the best game for you. Now the game is $15, which is definitely acceptable for 3 to 6 hours of playtime. The devs do need to keep the lights on after all, but if you're someone who likes the games they buy to really provide them with a good amount of time to sink in, and I tend to err on that side, you might want to wait for a sale. Truth be told, I did actually put this on my wish list before it came out in a Humble Bundle, but if it hadn't appeared in the Humble Bundle for this month, I probably would have waited a lot longer to buy it. That being said, if you're someone who is fine with a shorter experience, I did, like I said, have a good time while I played Just Die already, and I don't regret the time I spent playing it. If decent environments, puzzles, and slapstick hyperviolence comedy butter your biscuits, consider giving this one a try. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, sub, notification bell, and all that jazz. And if you hated it, leave a dislike, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace out, guys.